I was about 10 years old. I'm standing on the roof of a 2-story house. Tears are starting to come down my cheeks. And I start to contemplate, how in the world did I manage to get here? I didn't know how long I was going to be there. I didn't know how I was going to get down. But it gave me time to reflect. And there I was, 10 years old, too far to jump down. The window you couldn't get in. And I was stuck. So you're asking, how did I get there? So let me take you back. So it was just a regular Saturday morning, 10 years old. You get up, Dad's got chores for you. Always had chores on Saturday morning. But that day, I think I had something different in mind. I had a different itinerary than what he wanted me to do. And I don't know how it happened. I'm not quite sure what I said, but all I know is whatever I said, I saw the anger in his face. That look that you've seen, or that maybe you've given to somebody that said, if I can get a hold of you, I'm going to kill you. That kind of anger. I'd seen it in my dad many times before. We had always excused it as just the done temper. But this day, it was different because I saw him swing from the chair and get up and start running after me. Me being 10 years old, I was quicker and smarter, at least I thought. So I took off and I started running because I knew there was a beating coming. I'd said something that was really bad. I took off through the house, ran out the front door, around a huge hedge. As I came around the back side of the hedge, I could see him coming around one side. I darted back in the house. I ran up the stairs. I went to my bedroom, opened the window, got out on the roof, shut the window down, and as soon as I shut it, I saw his face on the other side of the pane. I heard him say, "I'm going to teach you a lesson." And then he disappeared. Now, just because he disappeared, I knew it was not safe yet to go inside. I knew he just needed to calm down. So I sat down on the roof and started thinking. It wasn't but a few minutes, and I heard this noise. The noise of a hammer going against a nail, as my dad was on the inside nailing the window shut. Yes. Yeah, I don't know. And as I saw him nailing the window shut, I watched as my mom was crying and saying, "You can't leave him out there." And I remember hearing him say through the glass, "He needs to learn a lesson." And I think, as I look back at that view of my father has characterized so much of my life. It has skewed my view of, when I think about God as my father, when I think about, when they say that God is your father and he loves you and he wants the best for you, I take pictures of that. Because honestly, I never really have had a good relationship with my dad. I try. Even Monday, we went to eat lunch, and I always walk away feeling that I'm not good enough. My dad was the disciplinarian. He was always the one who I always feared. The one I never could actually go and say, "Hey, I got this problem," or "I've got this struggle," because out of that would result in another whipping or punishment. And I've taken that and I've transferred that to my view of God. And I've looked at him, and I struggle with this all the time, is whether or not I actually feel like I can go to God and share my struggles. Whether when he says, "Come to me," I find myself in that place that I am with my dad, that I don't want to come to you. I don't want to talk about the things I'm struggling with. I don't want to talk about those things because I bring my earthly father experience into my heavenly father relationship. And I don't know about you, but I watch your heads nod, and I know you connect with this. And so I struggle when God says that he wants the best for me. I struggle with all of those questions in my mind, those emotions and those feelings that are so real. It makes me want to push away and not talk to him and just deal with things on my own. But I know God wants to teach us something different. He wants us to look at him as a father who really wants the best for us. But I think it comes down to trust. I think the fact is that I really struggle with trusting him. And today, David Weaver is going to share his journey about how he moved from that place of not trusting to saying, okay, God, I'm going to trust you in this.
I'm David. Let me say moving to that place. I don't know that I've completely arrived, but give you a quick synopsis of where I've come from and where I'm going with this story. And I've shared this in a group, and so Stephen kind of heard that and said, I want you to write this out. I'm divorced, and I was divorced in 2009, and about 6 months after I got divorced, my ex-wife, decided to move to Northern Virginia with my children. Well, of course, all through the divorce and all that, I'm dealing with the feelings of being abandoned and all of that from my wife, and now being divorced, I'm still in the same town, but I feel like I'm losing my children, and so I'm struggling with this thing in my heart. Okay, God, I'm not understanding the divorce, but I'm like, okay, I'm gonna trust you there, and so I kind of got that finalized, and then God's like, well, let's work on this trust with your kids. So that's where I'm talking about. So about 6 months after we got divorced, she comes to me and says, I'm going to move to Northern Virginia, which is like 3.5 hours away. And of course, well, she has the primary custody during the week, so I realize 5 days out of the week, my kids are not going to even be accessible to me. So I struggled with that for quite some time, and this is early 2010. But luckily, I was in community. I was coming to engage. I was involved in divorce care and other groups. So even though I struggled with it and I didn't really trust that God was going to take care of this, I knew that I had to eventually get to that point, and that I had guys in my life that if I didn't get to that point, they would help me get there. Thank you, Mr. Collins. But so I'm working through this, and you know, she moves in early 2010, and you know, somehow I'm getting by. The first probably year was pretty bad. I mean, probably every week that I dropped my kids off, I was you know, I would just cry because I would miss them. But through this whole time, I'm telling God and I'm praying to God, okay, God, I know you're teaching me something in this. I know you have something for me in this. I don't like this situation. It's not what I would have ever asked for, but I know you have something there for me. So fast forward to middle of last year, 2011, I guess God realized I still didn't have something resolved in my heart in this trust area that I have with him, that he really has best for me. Every time I hear the scripture, the Joshua, you know, trust the Lord that has plans for you, plans to a future and a hope, and I hear that and I'm like, okay, God, I'm divorced. My kids live 3.5 hours away. What are these plans that you have for me? You know, future and a hope and all this great stuff. And so God realized that, and so He, allowed this new thing to come about. And what this new thing was a relationship that my ex-wife was starting to have with another guy. And I had known, or I had, I guess, thought of, okay, she's eventually going to get remarried again. And immediately right away, and this is back when we got divorced, I knew, okay, do the math, she's going to get remarried again, this guy's going to be a dad to my kids. And if you know me and the way I feel about my kids, that just wasn't, that didn't compute for me. So so she tells me, and I'd had some suspicions that she was dating somebody, and I'd hear my kids talk about Mr. Walt, and so I would not try to spy, but be like, okay, who's Mr. Walt, and does he have a wife, and did he have kids with them, and I'm trying to be sly, and so I eventually figure out, he's going on vacations with my wife, my ex-wife, and my kids, and so I'm like, okay, God, I really don't like this, and of course I'm having all the imaginary conversations of me and this guy in a room, and I'm saying, these are my kids, this is my daughter, I've got a shotgun. Well, I really don't have one, but I will get a shotgun if you hurt her. I'm having all these wonderful imaginary conversations, but in the middle of this, God is really wanting me to really give this whole situation over to Him, which, I've been willing, but it's been tough. So she eventually, about 3 months ago, she made it official. She said, I just want you to know I'm dating this guy. And I was like, well, I kind of knew that. And so I realized that things are getting more serious with this guy. And so as my conversations with God in my head keep happening, it's really coming back to, I really need to trust Him, that He really has what's best for me and what's best for my kids in this. So about a month and a half ago, well, actually at the first of the year, Will gave a talk on who has been most influential in your life in the past year in drawing you towards Christ. And I thought for just a second, and this guy's name, Mr. Walt, that's what I'll just call him because that's what my kids call him, came to mind. And I started thinking, this man, even though I don't have interaction with him, I've only met him a few times, just that situation in my life God has used that situation to show me that He does have best for me, and He does have best for my kids, and that I just need to ultimately trust Him. And where that really started to, I guess, flesh itself out in my mind was after Engage one night, one evening after a Monday night, I started having a conversation with Steve Collins, who's my big brother, and he was kind of just sharing with me about when his ex-wife got remarried, and this guy was, for the lack of a better term, a train wreck, and she's calling the police, and the kids are having to be in the middle of this, and so I'm thinking, okay, well, at least Walt, this guy that I know, he seems to be an upstanding guy, and he seems, I don't know that he's a Christ follower, but at least he's nice. I've met him a few times, and so I'm like, okay, God, I know you're protecting them there. Even though if he was a horrible guy, I know that you will still protect them. And so it was that conversation. 2 days later, I'm driving down the road, and God brought that conversation back to my mind, and just really made it very clear to me that He has best for me, He has the best for my kids, and that I need to ultimately trust Him in this. And just a little backstory on why the trust issues there. First off, of course, my wife left me, so I've got huge trust issues with people, and now I feel like my kids are leaving me because one drive back from Northern Virginia, my daughter, and I don't know why, but it came from my daughter, and that just seems to, not that I love my daughter more than my other two boys, it just seemed to be a little bit more stinging coming from her, but she just pops up in the back of the car and she says, I want Mr. Walt to be my stepdad. in the middle of just no conversation about anything like that. So I was speechless in that moment, and I said, God, okay, what are you trying to teach me here? And what God is trying to teach me is that He is going to be their father, and that I have a role, but He is ultimately going to watch over them, and that I need to trust Him in that. And Stephen gave me the verse, come to me. Jesus has been calling me to come to Him and to trust Him in this. And it's hard. It is very difficult. But that day, that conversation that I talked about, and I know I'm kind of rambling, but that conversation that I had with Steve, that 2 days later, where God spoke to me in the car, and it was very vivid. I remember exactly where I was at. On the road, and God just really said to me right then and there, and it was almost like a turning point in my heart, that this is a matter that He has complete control over, and that I can rest in peace, that my children will be safe, my children will be watched over, and most importantly, that this situation that they're in right now, and I don't know that this guy will eventually be stepdad, but regardless of the fact, this situation right now will be used for God's glory. And for me to have that perspective in my life, to trust Him with really the most dear thing to me on this planet, my 3 kids, has been a huge thing. So just a quick thing and I'll close. Some of you may ask, how in the world, and I know I haven't been very good about explaining the whole thing. There's much backstory there, but how in the world did I get to this point to where I can be driving down the road and have one little conversation with God in my head, and then all of a sudden I have peace with this? It has literally been a year and a half or 2 years of prayer, and not like massive consistent like on my face prayer, but just a prayerful consideration of, okay, God, I know you have the best for me. I know you want good for me. You have a future and a hope for me. And these things, my wife leaving, my kids being away, stepdad coming into the thing, all of these are superficial things to where God can completely work in all of those areas. And so I just need to trust Him, and I do. I still struggle, but I do trust Him, and I do have peace, at least in that area of my life.
So why don't we trust? What do you think the biggest thing is? Why don't we trust God? And I've drilled down on this thing on me this last week, and I came to this conclusion. I don't trust God. I wrote it down. I don't come to God because I don't trust. I don't trust because ultimately I don't really believe. It's a hard thing to say. I know what He says, but does my life really reflect that I believe it? And that's the struggle. Because I don't think my life, oh sure, I'll have glimpses of it, but ultimately it comes down to, I don't think in a lot of ways God likes me the way I am right now. He may like me 10 years from now. He may like me when I am past the struggles and past all the issues. I struggle with the thought that He likes me, He loves me right here, right now. Struggle with that. And then we go to that verse, Matthew 11:28. He says, come to me, all who are weary, all who are burdened, all who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. He's not saying, fix the stuff and then come to me. He's saying, come to me in the middle of the stuff. Bring it to me. Don't try to fix yourself. You're already a mess. Come to me, right where you are. In the midst of the mess, I already know. I just want you to come to me. I love what the Message, same verse, says this. Are you tired, worn out, burned out? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. But it's such a struggle. So, in the middle of your train wreck of a life, in the middle of the struggles, the lust issues, the bitterness issues, all of those things that are and unforgiveness issues, all of those things that you're in the middle of right now, Jesus is saying, come to me. To try to fix this, you need to come to me. So I wanted to bring this to the bottom line is because we don't come to him because ultimately we don't really trust that he really has the best for us. We don't come to him because we're afraid, like I was with my dad so much, that all I'm going to do is get a whipping. I don't come to him because I struggle with really believing what he said is true. So I don't know where you are. I don't know what you're in the middle of today. But today, I want, as we talk around the tables, to take one step toward that trust. To, as a group around the tables, take one step and let's start talking about why don't I trust, trying to figure out in your head, why don't I really trust you? Because I don't know anybody that totally trusts. I could be wrong. But for me, I find I want to fix myself. And God will like me in the future, or he sees what I will be in the future, but not me right now. And my struggle is, that's when he wants me to come to him. So the questions. What areas of your life would you say, God, I really don't trust you with that? Why? Has he let you down or not come through for you at some time in your life? What does your response look like? Second question, what steps can you take starting today to trust him in the area of your life that you discussed in the first question? It's tough. It's hard for me to get up here and admit this. It really is. But if I can't come and I can't tell you my struggles, then you're going to sit there and you're going to think, I'm the only one in the middle of this. I'm the only one that doesn't really trust. I'm the only one that thinks God loves me in the future, but he doesn't love me right now. He loves the idea of who I will be, or what I can be, but not me. Torn, broken, struggling every day. So what about you? We move into that. Experience the rhythms of grace. Let's go back to Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. You ever think about why he says, if you're weary, if you're overburdened, if it's heavy laden? You ever wonder why Jesus said that? It's because you know how exhausting it is trying to do this in our own strength. It wears us out. It exhausts us. And we finally come to that place where we throw our hands up and say, I can never be who you want me to be. I can never do this. And so what we do is it's no different than if, in my past, if I offend someone, if I've got bitterness between us, what am I going to do? I'm going to do what we all do, is I'm going to avoid that person. I see them walk in, I'm going down the other way. So when I get to that place where I feel that way, where I feel defeated, where I am weary, heavy, overburdened, Jesus says, come. And I say, I don't want to. I'm avoiding, because that's what I do in my real life. That's what I've done so much in my life. I avoid conflict. I avoid the problem people. I avoid when I disappoint someone, I don't want to confront them and feel their disappointment. You hurt me. You let me down. Jesus is saying, put all that away. Come to me. I love this verse. 2 Corinthians 9:8 in the New Living Translation. And it says, and God will generously provide all you need. Then you will have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. And God. And isn't that what we're supposed to do? We have been given so much. Not only will He give us everything that we need, but so much more so that we can extend that and hand that to others. It's when we pour out to other people that we grow. Our lives change. Even in my mess, when I pour this out, we all grow together. We all see God differently together. We walk out of here with a whole different understanding. The statement that I made earlier, we don't come because we don't trust. And we don't trust because we do not believe. And we do not believe because we do not know. If we knew Him, if we spent time with Him, then we would understand the character and the nature of God. And I have to trust that God is faithful, that He grants me grace. And it's only in that grace can I sit in my junk and say, you love me just where I am. And you want me to come to you, crying to you, God, I can't do this any longer. Come to me. Come to me. Come to me. Steve, would you close in prayer?